Right, we've now got our third presenter today. Paula Beck is education consultant, and Paula's going to talk about using picture books in middle years Australian curriculum. And your time starts.
Thank you. Okay, I'm not a big user of slides, I'll rather just talk really fast, so I've got a few slides I'll start with and then get into it. But I've got so much information, I typed up a massive resource thing so you can download that later on to get more information about all these books, and I'm basically just going to do a show and tell. I'm not a bookseller, but I just love picture books. So that's how you can find me. November is Picture Book Month, so it's really great timing to be doing this right now. There is a website for Picture Book Month, and if you go on there, there's absolutely loads of resources and links to authors and illustrators as well that you can access. It's an international site, so you're mostly getting overseas authors and illustrators, so a bit of exposure to different people than what we would use, as well as some mega famous ones. I'm mostly going to just talk about Australian, actually West Australian picture book authors and illustrators today though. Also Digo. I've just started creating some shared public groups on Digo, so if you're interested in picture books, please join in, add your own links in there, and you will get credit because whatever you add in, you'll then become a contributor to the group. I've got 2 approaches, but if you see my handout, I've actually listed about 9 approaches. There's so many different ways to use picture books, but typically in secondary schools, I think we mostly do that make a picture book or just look at them basically, so I'm suggesting we find some different ways and even think about how early childhood teachers use picture books as actually lots of immersion around a topic, and really in secondary and upper primary we lose a lot of that immersion. So thinking about general capabilities and cross-curricular priorities are a great way of tapping in with picture books. Okay, we've got to cover those things. So if we use picture books we can knock them off really quickly. So I'm going to start with some Aboriginal picture books just to give you a bit of exposure to some titles. The Story of Crow, The Snapping Bungaroo, Do Not Go Around the Edges are 3 quite old picture books but useful even though they're aimed at much younger audiences. This one, The Story of Crow, actually has the Aboriginal language printed as well as English, so it gives you that sense of culture, intercultural understanding as well as the Aboriginal context as well, so it's useful for that. That one and Snapping Bungaroo are really good if you're looking at myths and legends or folk tales, all those sorts of things can tap in there. Do Not Go Around the Edges has Daisy Automara's story printed along the bottom, as well as her poetry in the middle of the page, and the Aboriginal images as well. Okay, so there's a bit of exposure to those. Our World, you may have seen this book. If you haven't, check it out, it's fabulous. It's been winning awards, and it's produced by the One Arm Point Remote Community School, and it's fantastic for actually exposing us to their culture. The school produced it, and there's all sorts of stuff about the school and the students, but also their culture and their cultural activities. Spearfishing, how to treat snake bite, all that sort of thing. And it's so multimodal because there's drawings and there's photos and there's paintings and so many different things in this book. So that's a fantastic resource. Then, Asian literature. Now, I'm sure you would have all heard of Sean Tan. Sean Tan is like the master of picture books. Should be, he's a legend, everything. I love his stuff, so there's lots of books you can utilise of his. And of course there's The Lost Thing, so you've got that resource with The Lost Thing with the movie as well as the picture book, which is that one. He has a new one out, Rules of Summer, so if you haven't seen that, definitely worth a look, absolutely beautiful. But in looking at Sean Tan's work, you could do an author study really simply on his books. And with picture books, the beauty is you don't need a class set of books. So if you pick someone like Sean Tan, or I'm going to show you a couple from Mark Greenwood or Matt Otley, if you pick an author like that who's been quite prolific, then you can get away with just actually having 1 or 2 copies of their books and do a study on that person in your class, because then you get your students working in a group, tackling a book each. So with Sean Tan, for instance, I'd do a group project where you put this book with one group, you put The Lost Thing with another group, etc., and they have a look at the book and work on that, and then come back and produce to the class and talk about what they're noticing. And then you look at the common things that come up across that theme. What sort of images, what sort of subject matter is he writing about? And if you do that with several authors, you could come up with a whole set of themes and issues that might be consistent to picture books of this kind as well. This, however, is my favourite Asian connection picture book. which you may not have heard of, called The Seeing Stick, and it is about a blind girl and an old peasant who helps her to see, obviously not truly see, doesn't clear her vision. But what's really great about this is quite tactile, and it operates in a similar way to what I imagine Braille really works for blind people. In that as you turn the pages, it starts off really, really dark initially, and then as you get further towards, as she starts to see, you get more colour, and you really want to touch the pages. There's something a little bit tactile and beautiful about it. And there's lots and lots of online resources to support those. So, Matt Otley, he's another one you could do an author study on because he's produced just so many books. This one, Tree and Parachute, he's actually got classical music to accompany it now. He started composing music to go with his picture books, so all his new books will have that. You can buy that for those two. There's also Luke's Way of Seeing, which is fantastic, and my favourite, Mrs. Millie's Painting. Then, as I mentioned, Mark Greenwood. Mark Greenwood is fantastic, teacher's notes, because he has written lots of books about historical figures, historical Australian figures, like Ned Kelly, like Jan Damara, but there's also Simpson and his donkey, and a couple of others, Moondon Joe. So you could have these books for your students, have a couple of copies and get them to do that and then research those figures. He takes a different angle to what traditionally is covered by other people writing about those books. And the one I really want to talk to you about is Home and Away. There are, you probably know this one, but there are a couple of others that are war inspired that are great. If you look at this, the covers have barbed wire, you can match them up. That could be a match of 3 picture books in a unit. However, if you did Home and Away with Martad's story, that would be a great unit for, say, year 6, 7, 8. Would be really good for getting kids to have a different perspective on the refugee situation, illegal immigrants. Do that with some news and current affair footage, and you can really change kids' perspectives. For older kids, you can do the same thing, but a new book out, Equal Justice, similar sort of thing. And also put in some expository material from The Good Life by Hugh McCoy. And Libby Gleason's got an article in here which fits in really well as well. I have cut and pasted some resource material that's in my resource package to go with it. So as I said, this is like speed, throwing it all at you, but you can read about it later and see how the package comes together. Okay, one quick last one. This one here has Creative Commons and you can find it completely online. Graphic novel for the older kids who think it's uncool to look at picture books. Okay, I'm done. Thank you.